Hi, folks. I'm so glad to be here with you. I've met some of you before in Grimes County, but I'm really pleased to be here. Today, I'm going to talk about organic gardening because I think it's incredibly important uh, to look at where we stand eh, in our abilities to preserve the environment, to be good stewards, and to look forward to producing food, producing beautiful plants for our future and for the future of our uh, children and grandchildren. Now, I want to say something now. Organic gardening is more than just gardening without pesticides or chemicals, and it's not some kind of hippy dippy thing that people do. It's important because there's so many other things that are involved with organic gardening. It's a philosophy really that supports the entire gardening system. The um, the goals of organic gardening are to build and maintain soil health, encourage biodiversity, use resources responsibly, avoid using harmful chemicals, and maintain a healthy growing area. I want to get into this, and I'm going to get into this a lot deeper and talk about some other things that are related to organic gardening and how organic gardening can help us conserve our soil, conserve our water, and conserve our environment. So, first of all, we want to build and maintain the health of the soil. The soil is really full of life, which supports plant growth. And that's important because a teaspoon of good soil can contain probably a billion microbes and maybe 10 miles of mycorrhizal fungi, which I will talk about also. And that's an important aspect of organic gardening. And so we want to preserve that soil life. One of the things that we haven't done in the past, and I'll refer back to the 1920s with the Dust Bowl, is having a sustainable farming and a sustainable gardening. What we have really done is after World War I, all the nitrogen products that they used to build bombs and explosives were left over. And so people said, oh, let's use all that nitrogen and make fertilizer. And they did that. And some people overused those things, and that's what resulted in the death in the Dust Bowl, because we had so many bad farming practices that occurred back then. And since that time, soil scientists have been looking at that and projecting into the future and saying, well, why did that happen? And how can we prevent that from happening in the future? Because we have an immensely growing population, and we really need to develop processes which can preserve the soil and maintain the health of the soil. So I'll go on from there. Uh, Good soil should have about 45% minerals, 5% organic matter, 25% air, 25% water, and that gives us soil life. Now, air and water are important as well. We don't think about those things, I know, but plant roots need air, plant roots need water, but also the microbes that live in the soil that produce certain elements that the plants need or make those elements available to the plants need air and water as well. So we have to start thinking about not just what's above the ground, but what's below the ground. I like to say that soil is the living layer of earth because it's alive, or it should be. So that's kind of a thing. And you've all seen the soil food web. Um, you have organic matter that, when I was a kid, I was raised on a farm, and we had a woods behind our house. And I'd go out there when I was a kid and wonder why in the fall all those leaves fell off the trees and then they disappeared. Well, now I know why they disappeared, because they were decomposed by bacteria, by fungi, by nematodes, by arthropods, and by even larger animals, by protozoas. So all of these things happen to disintegrate that organic material. And that was necessary for the plants to take in those nutrients again. In a plant, let's say a tree, 70 to 80% of all the nutrients that are in that tree are in the leaves of the tree. So when the leaves fall to the ground, those nutrients are reclaimed by this life in the soil. The same thing happens in our garden. When we have compost and mulch in our gardens, those things begin to decompose and feed these animals, these creatures that live in the soil. And it's important that we keep those alive. I make my own potting soil, and I make it with, now this is peat moss that I used, but I now make it with coir, which is coconut husks. I mix peat moss or coir, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 perlite, coir, and compost. And the reason I put the compost in is because compost has a great amount of living material in it, of living bacteria and living microbes that are important for any soil to stay alive. Now, I want to talk about this for a minute because this is important. This is the soil, talks about the soil pH. The soil pH was kind of discovered or invented by, in 1923 by a physicist named Søren Sørensen. He was a Danish physicist. And the pH of a soil means power of hydrogen. Now, one of the important things about this is that you can see at the bottom, there's a scale from 4 to 13. One of the important things about this scale is that it determines the amount of minerals that a plant can intake with different levels of the pH. Now, if you look over at the left on 4, you can see that very, very few minerals are available to the plants. Plants have to have at least, the soil has to have at least 6.5 to 7.5 pH in order to get all these minerals into the plant roots. And that's why I always recommend that people get their soil tested. We have one of the best soil labs in the country right there at A&M, the Soil Test Laboratory. And I think you can get your soil tested for about $15. In fact, I know you can. So I would recommend, if you are planning to have a good, well-balanced soil in your garden, to get your soil tested. It's a wonderful thing, and I always get my soil tested. It's extremely important to do that. The thing I want to talk about now is biodiversity. I talked about biodiversity in the soil, that we need the microbes, we need the protozoa, we need the mycorrhizal fungi, but we also need diversity in our plants. And that's necessary for the other animals that pollinate, that add beauty and add a sense of life to our gardens. And I think this is incredibly important too. I have monarchs and bees in my yard, bluebirds occasionally when they come in. And I think that's very important for the health of our whole garden, whether it's vegetable garden, whether it's an ornamental garden, it really doesn't matter as long as we have that biodiversity in there. And you can even use bats. I have angel trumpets in my yard. That angel trumpets are actually pollinated at night, because that's when they bloom, at night, by sphinx moths and Mexican short-tailed bats. And I think that's incredibly important for beautiful night blooming flowers. I mentioned night blooming jasmine. That's part of the Solanaceae family, which is also angel trumpets, Brugmansia, the datura, tomatoes, potatoes, peppers. Those are all part of the same family. And it's interesting that we raise the datura and the brugmansia, angel trumpets, the night blooming jasmine as ornamentals, and then we have the whole different set of solanaceae for eggplants, tomatoes, potatoes, and all those things. So those plants are all interrelated, but they provide completely different functions for our gardens. Here's just some examples. I know a lot of people in this area have a lot of potted plants, and I like potted plants. And this is just some examples that I wanted to put in here to show you a variety of possible gardens that you could have. I would say also plant natives. Now, these natives have been here since before humans set foot on this continent, and they've been surviving through droughts and floods and everything else, but just by whatever soil was available to them in this area. So, I mean, I would recommend highly to plant natives. The Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center in Austin is a great place to go to see how natives grow and how you can actually do some wonderful landscaping through using natives. One of my favorites is the inland sea oats, which I love. It's a little invasive, but I really like it a lot. And this, I have a friend of mine who makes great jelly out of the beauty berries, and it's just a great plant. I have also discovered that the leaves from the beauty berries berry plant can be used to repel mosquitoes. And I know this sounds strange, but my granddaughter and I boiled some leaves and made a tincture out of it and used it as a spray, and it actually repels mosquitoes. So that's just a little side of it.
Oh my goodness.
So it's interesting. Now I want to talk about monoculture and multicultural practices. This yard is obviously a monoculture. We have in Texas 4 million acres of lawns. That makes lawns the 4th largest crop in Texas, which is amazing to me. You can't eat it. You can't wear it. You can't even, I mean, it's, I guess, pleasing. It looks like a carpet. I mean, but as far as I'm concerned, this is much more attractive and as you can see, much more diverse. We have lots of different plants here and different colors. It's beautiful. You know, I had my yard just designated as a National Wildlife Federation habitat area, and you can also do that just by having a lot of native plants. But it doesn't necessarily have to be native plants. It just has to be plants that are available, provide food and shelter to any kind of animals. So I think that's important too. We want to use resources wisely with just a minimum of damage to the plant. And that includes use of water, energy, wood, plastic, growing containers, anything. So as you can see, rainwater harvesting is one of the really great things. I'm a rainwater harvesting specialist, and one of the things I do is give a talk on rainwater harvesting. We have 2 years ago, we sold 800 rainwater harvesting barrels in the woodlands, and now I think we have over 2,000 sold. People are really getting to use rainwater as a supplement to their water systems. And with the cost of water going up, it's very important. I have 5 rain barrels, 50 gallons apiece, so it's 250 gallons. I can water a lot of lawn, or actually I don't have a lawn, but a lot of plants with that 250 gallons. There's just another way of saving water. The important thing about rainwater is infused with nitrogen. The lightning in the clouds before the rain or during a rain actually breaks the hydrogen atoms the nitrogen atoms and infuses the oxygen atoms with nitrogen. And when that nitrogen falls, it becomes available to the plants. Plants can't take nitrogen out of the air. They can only take it from a certain solution, and rainwater provides that solution. So my rainwater is infused with nitrogen, and that's important because that lowers my fertilizer costs and usage. I think it's a great way to conserve water. Some people, there's a county agent up in Menard County who gets 5 inches of rain a year and operates his entire household, his showers, his cooking, drinking water, uh, his animals, his garden with those 5 inches every year. It's possible to do, and I think it's very important. And we want to talk too about watering, and I'm going to get into that a little further in a minute. Here are some great ways of watering. I'm a real proponent of drip irrigation. Drip irrigation is something that was developed originally in about 1953 in a kibbutz in Israel, and now it's worldwide. And they have some very sophisticated, very easy to install, and very inexpensive to install drip irrigation systems. And I would highly recommend people looking at it, especially for bedding plants or ornamentals. And one of the problems that we've been seeing, especially in this area, is that the largest vector of disease in plants is fungal infections. And fungal infections are caused by moisture, or actually enhanced by moisture. And what's been happening is people are using sprinklers to water their gardens or their ornamental gardens and their vegetables. That water splashes on the leaves and encourages fungus to grow. So we're recommending drip irrigation. In fact, in the Woodlands, I installed a program where we have rebates, 50% rebate on people installing, on the cost of installing a drip irrigation system, rain barrels, native plants, and smart controllers. So, I mean, I think that's really important because what we've done is encourage the use of preserving our water systems, a healthy soil, and native plants that are really important. And the smart controllers actually reduce the water usage by significant amounts. Drip irrigation reduces water usage by about 30%. So I think that's important to look at. And of course, we have composting. And I do my own composting, but I don't ever have enough compost to do it, so I have to go buy it somewhere. I understand that there's some great mushroom compost up there. Ann, am I right about that?
In Madisonville.
Yes.
It's
In Madison.
free. It's free now.
I'm getting a trailer and going up there and picking some up. That's what I'm going to do. Some other examples of plants, and some other examples of rainwater harvesting and composting. I use this compost operation here because it gets a lot of air through there. A lot of people don't like compost. They say, oh, it stinks, but it really doesn't. Good compost smells like good, clean earth. And so that's what I use.
Yeah.
And there are some other composting things. There's an electronic one in this composting. I think this is a worm composting operation, but I just use a regular compost area. Now, I think this is important because this reduces significantly my use of any fertilizer. I only use organic fertilizers, but using compost actually takes the nutrients that have been in the plant leaves and the plant stems and any other things, disintegrates it and increases the bacterial count, the microbial count in the soil. So I'm getting the best of both worlds. I'm taking the nutrients out of what would normally be wasted and putting them into compost, or turning them into compost. So I'll have a very rich soil that reduces my need for a lot of things. And the interesting thing is that I've found, I do a lot of testing out here in the woodlands and in Montgomery County. People call me and say, oh, I have a problem with my lawn or something, and I'll go out there and check it. One of the problems I've seen is that the yard, the ground is hard as rock. And the reason the ground is hard as a rock is because, one, they've probably killed all the microbial activity in the soil. And what has happened is that because those things are dead, the soil has compacted. There's no air in there. There's no water that can penetrate. We have a real problem with people watering their lawns and seeing the water just roll off the lawn into the street. And that's because it's not soaking into the soil. But with only 5% of organic material in your soil can increase the water holding capacity to 3 quarts per cubic foot. So let's say I have a yard that's 4,000 cubic feet. 4,000 square feet would equate to 4,000 cubic feet if you're looking at it from the side. To 3 quarts per cubic foot. That
Bob, you're on mute.
Ah. I'm gonna fix it.
there.
Got it. Yeah.
Okay. So did you hear about what I was talking about the water holding capacity of good soil?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So one of the things that I really encourage everyone to do is A, use rainwater, but B, use compost, and good organic compost, not the stuff you buy in the stores. You know, the bags of, for instance, cow manure that they sell in the stores. I have no idea where that comes from. I'm thinking probably it comes from feedlots. And in feedlots, they feed calves and yearlings antibiotics and growth hormones. Well, I don't want that in my yard or my garden or any other place. I want good, clean compost. So I look for good organic compost that I can use in my soil that's going to continue the growth and not harm my pets or my grandchildren or anything else or me, and add to the environment and increase the water holding capacity of my soil, which is something that's important, I think. That means less water I have to use to do that. I'm trying to get the next slide here. I'm having trouble. I'm not sure what's going on here. I'm getting there. Thought I was getting there. There we go. The next thing I suggest is avoid using harmful chemicals. Now, biotics in the soil, the bacteria, the protozoas, the nematodes, all of the bacteria in the soil, all the biotics are just like us. I mean, they can't take salts. We can't drink salt water. They obviously can't drink salt water or assume salt water. So a lot of almost all of the non-organic chemicals that we use on soil, including fertilizers, are very high in salt. And salt will kill the bacteria and the biotics in the soil. So one of the important things is that's the other reason why I found all these lawns with hard soil in them, because they used chemicals like Roundup and all this other stuff, which are high in salt, to do whatever they're supposed to do in their soil. And that's killed all the bacteria, all the life in the soil. And so if you don't have life in the soil, you can't go anywhere. A&M just did well, they did it a few years ago, a study about St. Augustine grass. And St. Augustine grass that was had good organic material and had not a lot of water, in fact. And then they had another, and the roots of that St. Augustine grew about 5 feet deep. Then they had another test they did with soil being just regular soil, no additive, no compost in it, no organic material. And you could just pick up the strands of St. Augustine, just lift them right out of the soil. So their roots were about this deep. So you have 5 foot versus this. During a drought, during any other times of stress for St. Augustine grass or any other grass, anywhere the warm season grass, any time of stress, you're going to have a problem with that soil or the grass if the roots are only this big. But if they're very deep roots, then those plants can fight off disease, can fight off drought, because they've set their roots so far down into the soil that they can obtain water from other sources than just pouring water on the soil. So one of the things that they also showed that grass with deep root structures was only watered once a week, 1 inch a week. The other lawn was watered every day. So it's interesting. We have a ban in the woodlands, which I also put into effect, that has only 2-day-a-week watering, and it's enforced. I have people and I hate to give people tickets, but we do. The odd number houses ending with odd numbers, or in businesses and churches and schools ending with odd number addresses, can only water on Tuesday nights and Friday nights. And even addresses can only water on Wednesday nights and Saturday nights. And what that has done is that's one of the things that has really helped to decrease our water usage. That information about conservation, my talks, other people's talks, and the enforcement has really reduced it, because it draws people's attention to the fact that water conservation is important. But it's not only water conservation, it's soil conservation as well. If we water once every day, then what happens is we drowned all those bacteria and life in the soil, and we can't do that either. I mean, so it's important to understand that we should only water 1 inch a week on any of our plants. And I think that's important too, because we want them to grow strong, deep roots. And the only way we're going to get them to grow strong, deep roots is if we have a good soil that the roots can penetrate, and a good biotics in the soil, so the roots can obtain all the nutrients they need. Now, I want to talk about colored mulches for a minute. I know they're real, people like them, but one of the problems is in 2003, the federal government, EPA, outlawed the use of copper, chromated copper arsenic. That's arsenic in treated lumber. All the lumber that was treated before 2003 used chromated copper arsenic. So what a lot of companies are doing, mulch companies, is they're taking old pallets prior to 2003, and believe me, there are millions of old pallets out there prior to 2003, old decks, old fencing, all of these things that were prior to 2003, and chopping them up and dyeing them and selling them as colored mulch. So the treated wood can kill bacteria, it can kill earthworms, it can kill people, because, and I'm not saying it's all like that, but I think it's important to do your homework about that, to find out if your mulch was produced after 2003, from lumber that was treated after 2003. And I know that's difficult to find out, but I would rather be safe than sorry. And speaking of earthworms, if you have earthworms in your yard or in your planting, you have good soil. I mean, that's basically it. You know, you don't have to put the earthworms in there. They'll come if you have good soil. They'll appear. This is just people, some nice people that I know who are showing me their vegetables. We have 2 great community gardens, actually 3 now. We built a children's garden in the Woodlands with it's a giant pizza, and it's planted by season. So the children can come, and they do. Well, we haven't since COVID, but we have children coming in from all the schools and planting the different slices of pizza as the season goes by. So they can understand what plants grow in what time of the year and how to care for those plants. So it's been very successful. The children love it. And the parents love it too. So I want to talk about biological control of insects and pests right now. We have aphids, we have stink bugs, we have slugs, we have hornworms, and we have scale. Those are just some examples of pests that we have in our gardens. One of the things that we're always tempted to do, and I guess that's just part of our nature, is if we see a bug, we want to kill it, you know. And so the easiest way to kill it is to buy some bug spray or some kind of chemical and spray it on them. But that's not what we need to do. Aphids, for instance, can be destroyed by a quick blast of a hose on a leaf. You figure aphids are so small, you blast them off a leaf, it's going to take them a week to get back up on that leaf. And they'll be dead by that time. So you don't have to really worry about the aphids. Add a little soapy water to it, and it really works. They'll die immediately. Stink bugs, for instance, you can use. I have a coffee can that I use, and I just flick them off into some soapy water in that coffee can. It kills them instantly. And so I don't have to worry about any bad stuff. Slugs are the same way. You can pick them off, or you can spray them with soapy water, and that will have the same effect. Now, these hornworms, tomato hornworms, if you have them, I get them on my, not only on my tomatoes, but I get them on my brugmansia, the angel trumpets, because they're same family. The best way to get rid of these hornworms is to find a 10-year-old boy and show him how to squash them. And what he will do is he will find everyone on there and he'll squash them because he loves to see that green stuff splatter all over the place. So get a 10-year-old boy, if you got a grandson or great-grandson, get him out there and he'll take care of all the hornworms that you have. And scale is something similar. I've used soapy water or fatty soap on scale, and it's completely taken care of them. So I don't have to worry about scale. We've had a lot of house plants, not at my home, but at the water works. I put a native plant garden in there at our water resources building, but we had a lot of scale, and I just used a fatty soap mixed with water, and it worked fine. We got rid of all the scale insects. So there are ways to solve insect problems, pest problems, by not using any kind of chemicals that are harmful to the soil. Because if it kills the bugs by chemical means, it's going to kill a lot of other things as well. And so it's important not to do that. Now, let me take it a little bit further. Everything that we put in the soil eventually leaches out. So people say, well, you know, what's the big deal about my water going into the street? Well, first of all, it washes, it wastes water. But second of all, if there are any chemicals in that soil, it's going to be leached out into the storm sewers or wherever, into the streams, into the rivers, and eventually out into the Gulf. Two of the things that are happening now, in northern Galveston Bay, the fish are not fit to eat. you cannot eat the fish in the northern part of the bay because they're toxic. And we have this great gyre out in the Gulf of Mexico that's it's mostly caused by runoff, agricultural runoff from the Mississippi River basin, but it's done the same thing. The chemicals that they're using has actually killed all the marine life in this gigantic gyre just off the coast of Texas. So we have to start thinking about what our specific actions are doing to the rest of our environment outside of ourselves. I think that's really important that we think about that and we start acting in that form. You know, for so long we think, well, we can control our areas, our climate, everything else, but we have to understand that we're supposed to be stewards, I think, and stewards, to being a steward of our natural resources, it's important that we treat our natural resources as we would treat the rest of our lives, as we would treat our human beings as well. So I think it's very important to understand that there's a nice element of thought that goes through this whole process. So it's not just a kind of a nice thing to do. Organics is a nice thing to do. It's important that we understand that there is a direct relationship between organics and our lives and the lives of all our family, our relatives, our friends, the whole world. So I think we need to look at that in the future. The other thing I would like to say is that it's important to encourage natural predators in our gardens. The garden spider, this nice orb weaver here, I love, and I keep them out I try to keep them out in the garden by creating areas that they can build webs on. And of course, praying mantises. And this is an assassin bug. You don't want him in your house, but you certainly want him outside. And this is a ladybug, of course, you know about that. You can get all these. I don't think you can buy the orb weavers, but you can buy all these others online and release them. Now, the only thing I would say about ladybugs is release them at night and maybe spray them down a little bit, because if not, they'll fly back to California in a short time. They'll be gone. So do that. Now, here's fire ants. These are ants over here that are actually killing some kind of larvae or caterpillar. And this is a trachinid wasp over here. Now, one of the things about these wasps is that A&M is doing a study in South Texas right now using these trachinid wasps. There's a special species of trachinid wasp that actually attacks fire ants. And what they do is they lay an egg on the head of a fire ant, and the egg actually takes over the brain of the fire ant and kills it. Fire ants know that this wasp is around them. When that wasp comes down, the fire ants just scatter because they know that that is a danger to them. The problem with this specific species is they can't figure out how to get it moving farther north because it is specific to the southwest Texas. So at some point they may be able to develop a hybrid that can move farther north and do something with these fire ants. Having said that, fire ants are great predators, and they will, I even let them in my compost because I think it's really important to use them as a decomposing factor. Now over here you see this caterpillar who has also been infected with another different species of trachinid moth, and trachinid wasp. That wasp has laid eggs. The female wasp has laid eggs on the back of this, and these are actually larvae that are growing out of the caterpillar, and it will kill it eventually. So I think that's some of the things in natural ways of controlling insects that are dangerous to us. And of course, then we have other things like frogs, lizards, bats. You know, I sit on my back deck and watch the bats at night. just flitting around eating insects and birds as well. I mean, I have a robin that whenever I'm turning my compost, she comes by and just stands there until I throw her some worms or some grubs that I'm finding in my compost. And she'll collect those and then take them back to her nest, which is kind of nice. But also we have other things like copperheads. I know that we don't like copperheads and they're venomous, but I try not to harm them. Now, sometimes if it's a big copperhead, I'll pick it up with a shovel gently and throw it over the fence into my neighbor's yard. So, that's, hopefully they'll deal with it in a better way. But I try to protect all the animals that actually destroy natural insects in my garden. Pick by hand. I pick a lot of insects by hand, especially these cabbage loopers. You can find them, pick them by hand, squish them. There's no big deal. So you don't need to spray. Although there are some sprays that are organic, and I will talk about them in a minute. Right now, as a matter of fact. You all know about mosquito dunks, I hope. Mosquito dunks are infused with a bacteria called Bacillus thuringiensis. And it's also not only Bacillus thuringiensis, but it's also a specific strain of Bacillus thuringiensis that only affects the larvae of mosquitoes. What it does, it stops the larvae from eating and they die. So you kill a whole generation of larvae. And I'm sure you've all seen these. They're just look like little donuts. You break off a piece, or you put the whole thing in your rainwater, in your rain barrel, or in your potted plants, near your potted plants where you may have some standing water. Any place you have standing water, and they will do the rest. They're totally harmless to birds, to animals, to humans. The only thing they affect is mosquitoes. Now, there are other forms of BT which affect other insects, but mosquito dunks are really, really the best. Neem oil. Neem is made from the neem nut, which came out of India originally, but it's now they have plantations all over the South, neem oil plantations, and they produce it here in the United States. And neem oil actually suffocates insects. Insects breathe through their trachea, which is located on their legs, at the joint of their legs, where the legs enter the body. And neem oil actually penetrates that and clogs up the breathing of those insects, and they die. So neem oil is very, very organic. It dissipates very quickly. As with all of these, we need to be careful, though, that neem oil can also kill beneficial insects. It's terribly important to understand that we not only need to kill or to destroy or to eliminate the bad insects, but we also need to preserve the good insects. And the other point I want to make is that by preserving the good insects, they need to have food. So if they're preying on harmful insects, then what we need to do is make sure they have a little food left over. So I wouldn't kill everything. Leave a few there just for food for the insects. And here, this is, oops, let me go back. This is using just soap and water, using some Dawn liquid and water to spray on plants. This will get rid of a lot of insects. It will either repel them or it will kill them. Insecticidal soap, Orange Guard. This is I use this sometimes on fire ants. If I want to get rid of a fire ant pile, just use orange oil, followed by a treatment of diatomaceous earth. So that's really good. Fungal diseases. Let's talk about that for a minute. There are some really good products out there that are natural and non-dangerous to the environment. Potassium bicarbonate is a great thing. Copper fungicide. Neem oil actually works really well on fungal infections. So I would suggest, if you want to use these are great. There are probably some others out there. But you can see that viral disease is most important to, I can't see my slides here. Okay. Now, we want to maintain a healthy garden and landscape, create a fertile and biologically active soil. We want to start with healthy plants, and that's something else I wanted to mention. I bought some plants at Home Depot, which I don't usually do, last year, and I looked on the plant label that was stuck in the little 2-inch pot, and there was another label behind it, and the other label said treated with neonicotinoids. Neonicotinoids are kind of a new insecticide that is very, very dangerous. It affects humans, it affects animals, and it affects beneficial insects, especially bees. So I would be really careful when I look at my plants, when I buy plants, to make sure that it doesn't contain neonicotinoids. Now, I'm not saying Home Depot does it now. I haven't bought any plants from Home Depot or Lowe's in 2 years at least. But I usually grow my own now from seed. But the healthy plants are important, and it's important that you look at where they came from or what they've been treated with. So, and I don't just trust the general label of that. So I would definitely do that. So start with use disease-resistant varieties. Now, there are a lot of great varieties out there of hybrids that are wonderful. For instance, I would refer to things like purple coneflowers. There are some really great, beautiful hybrids for that. There are hybrids for a lot of other plants too. Lantana. There's just a wide variety of disease-resistant varieties. Tomatoes, of course. And what I would do is look for varieties that have been generally hybrids or from seed that have been developed for disease resistance. I think it's important because that helps our soil and our environment. Rotate our crops. Even with bed plantings. I have a friend of mine who's Dutch, and he's got everything. He's from Holland, and he's got everything in his specific place, and that's important. But he moves around his bedding plants, not his garden plants, but not his vegetable garden plants, but his bedding plants, to not have the same plants in the same area every year. So, for instance, this year he's planting pansies in his front lawn, which last year he planted. I'm not sure, I don't remember, but I think he had some aquilegia and some other things in there. So aquilegia is he uses the Hinckley columbine, which is kind of nice. It comes out of Presidio County. So it's important to keep that in mind, that we don't have to have all the same plants in the same area every year or every season. So it's important to look at that. How are we doing with time? Okay.
Yeah.
Now again, drip irrigation is very important. As you can see, this person on the upper left here is, are we doing okay in time, man?
Yeah, with 10:50, so whenever, I mean,
Okay.
we're flexible.
Okay, I'm gonna hurry up here. Watering from top is good. The only problem is that it can create fungal infections. So I always recommend drip irrigation. And drip irrigation, you cover that with pine straw or something. It's totally invisible. And finally, I'm at the end now. Glory of gardening: hands in the dirt, head in the sun, heart with nature. To nurture a garden is to feed not just the body, but the soul. And that was written by Alfred Austin. So I'm going to check and see if anybody has any questions. I'm sure you do. Now, where do I get to questions?
If you want to unshare your screen or take your screen off,
Sure.
then we could do a gallery view and
Great.
see, we've got 3 questions on the chat box, and it's Sherry. So everybody can put your gallery view on if you want, and then Sherry says, if you, I'll read these to you. If you mulch leaves into lawn, does that provide enough compost for next year's lawn?
Mulching the lawn? Is that what you said?
Mulching the leaves into the lawn.
Oh yeah, it definitely. Well, not enough, but it will provide some. We always mulch. I think it's very important. Grass, we have green waste pickup in the woodlands, and I tell people don't bother with that. Just mulch the stuff, mulch the leaves, mulch your grass, because that adds the nutrients back into the soil. The tips of the grass are important because that's all the nutrients in the grass. So if you're mulching it back in, and the leaves as well, you're getting those nutrients back. Now, having said that, I recommend that people put 1/2 or 1/4 inch of compost, natural compost, on their lawns at least once a year, either in October or in April. I think that's really important. Let me stop sharing here so I can get everybody up there. There we are. I think that's really important to do because it just keeps adding nutrients into the soil. Yeah, and you can put a little fertilizer on there, natural fertilizer. I use Microlife, and I think they're doing it up at A&M as well, but there's plenty of different kinds.
Let me tell y'all where that you can find that. Producers Co-op in College Station has the whole program of Microlife. So if you look there, that's something new that they have that you could always try out if you wanted to. But he's making a point here is that, you've got the lawn, you're going to if you mulch the grass, of course, mulch the leaves, and then add compost. So,
yes.
I've read somewhere about putting in corn gluten meal at a certain time. I think it was I don't remember when it told the time of year you could do it to help with, I don't know if it's pre-emergent type weeds or.
That's being studied. I don't think it's as effective as some people say. It's very expensive. It's incredibly expensive.
Well, I get it. I got it at Producers, which.
Oh, okay.
It's in bulk. I don't know what they use it for in animals, but they must.
Yeah. Well, I'd be interested in knowing how it works. I haven't tried it myself, but and I want to mention that Microlife is a Texas company. The guy who owns Microlife is Mike Serrant. He and his mother own it, actually, and they're out of Houston. And they do a lot of work up at A&M and also at UT. I don't know if I'm supposed to say.
What product of the Microlife do you use?
Yes, you are.
What products do I use? I use the Microlife 624, the Microlife. But there are other blends that you can use for different kinds. There's an azalea blend, which is a little more lower pH. There's a lot of different other kinds that he produces that are very great. But for general use, I use the 624.
Okay.
I use it for my lawn. I use it for my garden. I use it for just about everything. So, any other questions?
Did you find your chat at the bottom?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Okay, so let me look.
You got some questions in there.
Sure do. Yeah.
Sherry asked about the type of soap, but you were saying Dawn, right? Is what you use, like Dawn liquid with the soap?
I use Dawn. Yeah, it's great. Dawn is great.
But what proportions?
I'd use it in a quart. I would use maybe a tablespoon. Doesn't have to be a lot, because it'll kill them. I do it in a coffee can. I just flip them off into the coffee can.
But you could use that to spray with as well?
Oh yeah, sure you can. Yes, most definitely.
Okay.
Let me move this out of the way here if I can. Yeah. Controlling squash bugs. Somebody asked that, Sherry. Squash bugs, I control with a coffee can and soapy water. I just flip them off. And if you're squeamish about touching the squash bugs, wear gloves and just flip them off. It's not a big thing, and they die instantly, just instantly.
What about the little bugs that get on squash that move really fast? I don't know what they are.
It might be flea beetles, maybe the little black bugs.
They're small,
Yeah.
kind of black and red or black and yellow or.
Yeah, I don't know what they are. I haven't seen those. I know we've been having a lot of problems with squash vine borers.
Yeah.
They've been really terrible. In fact, we've stopped growing squash in our community gardens because of the vine borers. We haven't grown squash in the last 2 years.
There's no way to prevent those?
Well, I would say that neem oil probably would work really well. Spray neem oil on them, and it won't hurt the plant, but it'll definitely affect the insects. So that's what I would do. Cardboard under mulch. Did that answer your question,
Yes.
Gary? Cardboard on hazel. I've been using cardboard mulch, but I just read that it suffocates soil. Is that true? Well, I have, this past summer, we what we call solarized a garden. We had some really, really bad weed problems in there. So we took plastic and solarized it for about 2 months. What it did was it killed all the weeds, but it killed just about every microbe also in there. I would not use it. It will eventually disintegrate, but I would definitely use something else besides that. The mulch should be enough to cover it, to solve the weed problem and allow water to come through and keep the soil at a constant temperature. So I don't know if I would use cardboard under there unless I'm putting in some kind of permanent bed or some kind of ground a path or something like that. I wouldn't use cardboard.
Is newspaper okay?
I think that you have the same thing with newspaper. I can, if I'm putting in a permanent bed and I want to kill the grass first, I will use some newspaper. It's easier than just scraping the grass off the ground, but I want to use something that's not too thick, so it'll disintegrate rather quickly as soon as it kills the grass, and then the mulch will start to take over and disintegrate into the ground. But cardboard may be a little too thick for that. Let's see, got some other questions here. Is a combination of aeration with compost more effective? Yes, it is. The problem that we've been finding with aeration, do you all know what aeration is? There's a machine, actually you can do it a number of ways. A machine that actually, it's called a sheep's foot, and what it does, it reaches down and grabs little plugs of soil about 3 or 4 inches deep, and then you come back and put the compost on it, and the compost, it goes back into the soil and aerates the soil, gives the soil life and structure again. However, I need to well, let's talk about something Charles Darwin discovered. Before he wrote Origin of the Species, he wrote a book called About Earthworms. And what he did was every evening he would go out and put little bits of grass. He'd find the vertical holes for the earthworms, and he'd put a little piece of leaf or something at each hole, and he'd get out there with a lantern and watch. And these earthworms would come up from the soil and pick those little bits of leaves and move them back down into the soil. So what happens with the aeration and the compost is you're actually recreating that earthworm process by bringing the compost back into the soil. And I think that's a process that the earthworms appreciate as well, because they don't have to come up and get it. They can get it down in the ground. And the other good thing about earthworms is earthworms eat these things and these little bits of grass and natural material, and they pass it through their gut. And their gut really inoculates that soil that's going through there, or that material that's going through there, with other bacteria that is really good for the soil. So when you have earthworms, it really helps develop an entirely great soil, a whole different kind of thing. It's good. Any other questions? Yes, Sherry.
So when you talk about rotating crops, I've tried to do that with vegetables,
Yes.
but I found out just this last year that you don't need to just rotate, say, tomatoes, but everything in that family.
Yes.
Can you talk about the families that
Yes, I can.
are all together?
Yes. All of them except eggplant were originated here in North America, or excuse me, in South America, on the South American continent. Tomatoes they're all part of the Solanaceae family, which includes deadly nightshade. It includes Brugmansia, which is also called angel trumpets. It includes tomatoes, potatoes, peppers, night blooming jasmine, datura, and that's basically all that I know of. There's maybe a few other minor plants that they do, but all of those eggplants, by the way, originated in India. So we don't know how they got from here, how eggplants got from here to India, but that's where they originated. So we know that all the other Solanaceae originated here in the Americas.
So if I plant a pepper, I have raised beds. If I plant peppers in the bed that had tomatoes last year, that's not right.
I would move them around. I would not plant peppers and tomatoes in the same spot year after year. I would probably plant something else. So maybe cucumbers or squash or beans.
Okra, beans.
And okra would be great. And then, keep moving it around like that.
Okay.
Because that's what we do at the community garden too. We have a big community garden, two of them. And one of them, one of the ones that I built, half of it is dedicated to interfaith, and all the vegetables that are harvested there go to Interfaith Garden, or the Interfaith Food Pantry, which we produce a lot of food for the Interfaith Food Pantry, just on that garden. But we make sure that we rotate our crops. Yes.
So
Sarah.
what's the problem if you don't rotate? What does it cause?
Well, nematodes for one. Nematodes. The nematodes, especially tomatoes and peppers and potatoes, those nematodes will they encourage nematodes in the soil, and so what happens is you'll get an overabundance of nematodes, root nematodes, which will start destroying root crops and roots of tomatoes and everything else. So that's one of the reasons why we rotate. If you move the tomatoes or any of the Solanaceae out of that area, then those nematodes will die, and you won't have to worry about them anymore.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Bob, I've got a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I read about it somewhere, but it made sense to me. So I started thinking about at the landfill that I'd go to sometimes, and they have bags of mulch and bags of compost. They have it in bulk too. But I was there. It was a sunny day, and I just saw that. I actually saw evaporation going on inside. Or it wouldn't be evaporation, condensation. The bag.
Yep.
But I looked at it and I thought, if it's in a bag, it's like solarizing that compost, is my thought. So I thought
That's right.
you wouldn't want to get compost in a bag because basically it's going to kill all the life. I mean, that's my thought. And I
That's a
read
great
about it
observation.
somewhere that was true. So I just wanted to know if you had heard of that or thought of that kind of thing.
I had thought of it, but now that you say it, I get my compost that I don't make myself. I get it from Nature's Way Resources, which
Right.
is an organic composting place. And he's got some in bags, but his bags have perforations all through the
Right.
bags.
Somebody said they've
So
have perforations, and some places have them in burlap or something like that. That makes sense. But if you don't
right.
okay.
That's right. Yeah. Yes, Sherry.
Sorry, I have so many questions.
That's all right.
We like it.
Can you talk a little bit more about the mushroom compost? And I've heard that it can burn crops. So is there a
Well, I haven't
way
had a
to
lot
use
of
that?
experience with it, but I think Ann has.
Yeah, I have some. I just went and got some lately. The thing is, I mean, it's really good. The last time I got it, I just loved it. But when I put it on, first of all, it takes me a while to get all that I've got out from a trailer. I hire these two boys to do it, and them doing a little bit at a time takes a few days because their scoop is so big that it's not, if you get a whole scoop, it's more than a truck full. It's I take a trailer, which is great because now they're giving it free. You can get it free on certain days. But then know that, these places in College Station that sell topsoil, they're getting that free, and then they're adding sand and stuff to it to make garden soil. But so there's big trucks in there. But anyway, I highly recommend it. What I do is what I call sheet mulch. I'm putting just, 2 to 3 inches of it on top of everything. And I usually do it in the off season. So it's just sitting there and it cools off really quickly like that. The reason it's so hot and it's done, but it was still really moist. I mean, and I was telling Bob the other day that in a couple of days, or probably the next day, I looked out and I saw the mycorrhizal in the compost, like on the yard. I see it in there. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got life already. I mean, it's showing me that compost is so alive. And I also know that Joe, what's his last name, that does the vegetables at A&M? You remember his last name? Renee, he does vegetable improvement. I don't know if he's still there, but anyway, a long time ago when I first came to College Station, he actually did a test for A&M with the city compost versus the Madisonville, and the performance in the mushroom compost did far better. So, and it's basically, and they do organic mushrooms now too. So, but it's the straw bales, that they grow the mushrooms in. And sure, you might have some mushrooms growing in your yard later because, having some spores. But I find it really sticks together pretty well. It's moist. And the reason I changed is a lot of times I use that Twin Oaks. I went to Twin Oaks, but Twin Oaks, it was just like dust almost. And I think, oh, that can't have any life in it. I don't know if it's old or what the deal was, but I just didn't like the texture. So I recommend it.
One of the things I was going to say about mycorrhizal fungi is scientists have been really working with that, and they're finding that mycorrhizal fungi has a lot more properties than they originally thought. There is a study going on right now about mycorrhizal fungi that shows that, let's say you have a row of trees, and the one on the far side, let's say the one on the far left, has all the nutrients it needs and then can access all those nutrients. But let's say 100 yards down the area on the right, you have a tree that can't get those nutrients. For some reason, the soil is different. It can't get the nutrients. Well, mycorrhizal fungi knows which tree needs nutrients. And it will take nutrients from way over here where this one tree is getting the nutrients and bring it all the way over to this other tree and exchange it for sugar. The tree will give it sugar. It will give it the nutrient. I mean, to me, that's
Amazing.
so profound. Yeah, it's amazing. And I really like that. And mycorrhizal fungi has, one of the things about mycorrhizal fungi too is that it's a real, it's a real initiative to grow, use gardens with no till, because when we till, we break up all that mycorrhizal fungi. And so when I do vegetable gardens, my vegetable garden, I don't till. I just keep putting natural stuff. I might put straw down as a ground cover or as a mulch, and then just let it stay there. And maybe put some more compost on top and let that disintegrate, and keep doing that. I just keep adding material onto my gardens. And because I don't want to break up that mycorrhizal fungi, I think it's really important to be in there. So anyway.
Hazel's got a couple of questions on here.
Yes.
And she asked about a presentation on how to start a successful garden. And I just want to say that I'd really like some time, maybe a group, maybe to come and see yours and learn more about this.
We would love that. Yes, we would.
Because
Definitely.
I would like to bring some of these ideas. Well, probably at Brazos was where I would do it, even though I'm not right in Brazos. Because a long time ago when I first started gardening, I kept thinking, why don't we have presentations to different subdivisions constantly, as a added thing, and talk about rainwater harvesting, talk about conservation, talk about gardening, all this conservation. So I'm really interested in it. But she is wanting to know if you have a presentation on how to start a successful community garden.
I do. And I'll be more than happy to put it together. And I would love to have y'all come down and tour our gardens, because I think they're really good. We've done some real good experimentation. We've worked with Houston Urban Harvest, which we're a member of. And we've done a lot of work on our community gardens.
Maybe you could do that, and whoever wants to come, wear your mask, and we'll be outside and that kind of thing.
Yeah, we require the mask in the garden. We do require the mask. We do require the mask in the garden.
Yeah, we're a group that feels strongly about safety, or we wouldn't be having everything on Zoom. Hazel also asked, is it okay to mulch with pine needles under oak trees and pecan trees?
Yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, I use pine needles a lot. I don't always have enough, so I can buy it by bales through the Master Gardeners. We have a little co-op over there, and I like pine needles. I think it's attractive. I think it takes a long time to decompose, which is great because I don't have to buy more, and it adds nutrients to the soil. A lot of people worry about pine needles changing the pH of the soil, lowering the pH, but it really doesn't have any serious effect on the pH. And I think it's a great mulch for just about everything.
I use it in my vegetable gardens. One thing is that whatever hadn't disintegrated, because they don't disintegrate quite as easily, then I just pull them out, plant new, put my compost on, and then put them back on and refresh. Exactly. And I think they're beautiful. Of course, I have pine trees around here, but not probably as many as y'all. But I love them just in the garden too. I mean, I just think they're pretty mulch.
I do too.
And
I have a story to tell. We had one day, one of the park rangers in the Woodlands called me and he said, listen, we just caught this lady out here raking up pine needles in one of the parks. And she just piling them up and putting them in bags. And he said, she says she knows you. And you told her it was okay. No, she was one of our gardeners, and she just decided she's going to go over to the park and rake up some pine needles. And really, that was not a problem. The ranger was just a little upset about it, but we got it all straightened out. But I thought that was a good idea. I mean, it was free pine needles. She just went out there and raked them herself. So
Yeah.
Anne, could you
Yeah.
tell us where the contact is to get the mushroom compost? Is it the city, or where do you get it?
It's
And also where we can buy pine needles.
Well, Bob will have to tell you where you buy pine needles. Around here, you know, we have pine trees and we get them. But as far as the Madisonville, it's Monterey mushroom is where it comes from. That's the kind of mushrooms I buy in our grocery store. And during COVID, you can't buy mushrooms from them. But before, it was nice because you go up there to get your mulch and they'd say, do you want any mushrooms? And they'd put some in a paper bag and you got fresh mushrooms.
oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it was really
I
neat
like
because they're obviously a better price. But anyway, I don't remember the days, but they have certain days like Thursday, Saturday, and it's like an every other day type thing. That's they're free.
What's the name of the company?
Monterey
What's the name
mushroom.
of the company? What?
Monterey mushroom.
Monterey?
Monterey mushrooms.
So do they have a website?
Yeah, you could go to Monterey Mushrooms, Madisonville, and you'll see it.
Okay.
And it'll talk about compost, and then it'll have a number. I mean, if it doesn't say it there, I've called them several times, just asking, hours or anything. I thought about, my gardens don't look great or anything, but I thought about having, if anybody wanted to come over, and do what sometimes we've done before, because it's around Christmas time stuff. I've got pine cones and, cedar branches, pine mulch or whatever. If just to kind of be out, but being outside and distancing. So when I have a friend, she has a lot of pine mulch, and she gets those big, well, you can do this with a plastic bag, but those big black containers they feed something to cattle in, and she gets a pitchfork, and she lifts up a layer and she sets it on top of another, then she lifts up another layer, and then she's got a big stack of them, and then puts them in that. And I just like, oh my gosh, because she's probably got more than I have. She's got nearly all pine trees. But anyway, Bob,
I'm
where did you
suggesting,
get
I
your?
don't know, is it
How do you get
Producers Co-op? Do they have pine needles there?
No,
Probably not.
No.
I don't know in Walker County, but yeah, Brazos they don't.
Okay. I know I get mine at Nature's Way or through our co-op at the Master Gardeners.
Okay.
Nature's Way costs $20 a bale. Master Gardeners cost $7 a bale. So I prefer to get them at Master Gardeners. But
Well,
and
maybe
you might talk to your Master Gardener group and start a co-op.
Yeah, well, not this one, but maybe the Master one. But we might we've used that before, I think. So maybe you can ask your Master Gardeners your co-op where they get them. And
It comes from East Texas, I know, but because they have pine needle farms over there. They have tractors that just go through their pine needles and pick them up and bale them. But I will find out.
Yeah.
I'll find out and email you.
I'll see too. Okay. Let's see what time it is. Any other questions?
So if you buy a bale of pine straw, how much does that cover? Is that a lot?
Yeah, pine straw, you can spread it out a lot. I'd say a bale probably would cover maybe, let's say 15 square feet. So that's a lot. Because you can fluff it up and it will eventually sink, but it's just great it'll fluff it up, it'll allow the water to come through. It's really good. So about
And
a
it lasts
15 square
longer.
foot. And it lasts a lot
Yeah.
longer, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe I can find some other places. I have a friend that has a bunch of land and she has some pine trees too. If anybody's
There you
interested.
go.
So if we do what your friend did and contact the city and go rake it up in the park or something, do
Mhm.
we need to worry about pesticides or things that might be in the straw?
I'm not sure. You'd have to check with the city. I know in the woodlands, they don't use pesticides in the parks. In fact, they've gone pretty much organic. But you'd have to check with your municipality to see. But I bet they probably don't because it's it's in a park. They have trees underneath. They wouldn't be using pesticides for anything, I don't think.
And the pine needles keep other things out where the pine needles
Yes, they
fall,
do.
and there's really no need to use anything on pesticides on pine trees.
Right.
Anything
Good
else?
program.
Well, I'll talk to everybody and see if we can get something together, Bob, and do some more stuff because I'm really interested in a lot of the things that you're doing.
Great. I'd be happy to help in any way I can.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to stop the recording here.